4 years had passed since the Istvan III atrocity, when Horus Lupercal, War Master of the Great Crusade, had turned his blade on the Emperor, his father, and incinerated the loyalist Astartes of the XX Third Legion in the fires of betrayal. What followed was not merely war, but the unmaking of 2 centuries of progress, the Great Crusade which had carried humanity's banner from Terra to the edge of the known universe, laying claim to thousands of worlds in the Emperor's name, now lay in smoldering fragments. The Imperium of Man, once a monolith of order, had split into 2 warring halves. Loyalists, clinging to faith in the Emperor, and traitors, drunk on the power of the Chaos Gods, and the galaxy burned between them. The worst of it was the warp storm, woven by traitor remembrancers, their souls sold to Tzeentch, the changer of ways. It had torn through the Imperium's core like a scythe. Navigators, those psychers blessed or cursed, with the ability to guide starships through the roiling, sanity-shredding depths of the warp, stared in mute horror as the Astronomican's golden light vanished. For centuries, that light had been humanity's compass, a beacon cast by the Emperor from the Golden Throne on Terra, cutting through the warp's darkness to show fleets the way home. Now, it was gone. Ships were stranded mid-voyage, their crews either starving to death or descending into mutiny as the warp's whispers gnawed at their minds. Colonies were left to fend for themselves, cut off from resupply or reinforcement, easy prey for ork, age, tyranid splinter fleets, or worse. On the agri-world of Calth, once a breadbasket for Ultramar, farmers watched as their crops withered under a sky turned crimson by the storm. In the hive cities of Necromunda, gang lords fought over dwindling food stocks while daemons slipped through cracks in reality to feast on the desperate. Even the Astartes, the Emperor's angels of death, were not immune. A squad of imperial fists, stranded on a dead moon, had resorted to cannibalism to survive, their gene seed's flaws twisting their minds as hunger overcame honor. This was the age of darkness, a time when hope was a sin and survival was a miracle. For the eastern sectors of the galaxy, the situation was even grimmer. Cut off from Terra by the storm, they had no way of knowing if the Emperor still lived, if Horus had already seized the Golden Throne. All they knew was the traitor fleets, led by the likes of Angron, Primarch of the World Eaters, and Mortarion, Lord of the Death Guard, roamed freely, burning worlds and corrupting Astartes to chaos. What these sectors needed was not just a leader, but a symbol, something to bind their broken forces together, to remind them that humanity was not yet defeated. That symbol would soon take root on the Crash, the verdant homeworld of the Ultramarines, forged in the blood of Primarchs and the secrets of an ancient Xenos race. Macrega's last stand, Guilliman and the Pharaoh's device. Below him, the city of Conor bustled. Ultramarine Astartes marched in formation, their blue power armor glinting in the sun. Civilians hurried to market, their faces drawn but determined. Servitors trundled through the streets, carrying supplies to the docks. But Guilliman saw beyond the surface calm. He knew that Ultramar, the 500 worlds he had built into a bastion of order, was teetering on the edge of collapse. The Shadow Crusade, led by Lorgar Aurelian, Primarch of the Word-Bearers, had left its mark. Only months earlier, Lorgar's fleet had attacked Calth, reducing the world to ash and glass. Though the Ultramarines had repelled the traitors, the damage was done. Calth's agri-fields were gone, its factories in ruins, and thousands of Astartes lay dead. Worse, Lorgar had left behind chaos cultists and daemons, scavengers, picking at the bones of Ultramar. Every day, Guilliman received reports of raids, a convoy of food ships destroyed near Ajax, a mining colony on Espandor overrun by plague bearers, a squad of Ultramarines' Third Company found butchered, their bodies arranged in a mockery of the Emperor's symbol. To make matters worse, the Edict of Nicaea hung over them like a noose. 10 years earlier, on the world of Nicaea, the emperor had gathered his primars and decreed a ban on all psychic powers within the Imperium. The edict had been born of fear. Fear that the warp's corruption would spread, that psychers would become portals for daemons. But now, it was a death sentence. The Ultramarines librarians, those Astartes gifted with psychic abilities, were their best defense against chaos. Without them, the daemons ran rampant, their warp-born powers unchecked. Guilliman's fist tightened around the railing. He was a primarch of the Emperor, created to enforce order. But order meant nothing if his people died. The edict was the Emperor's will, he muttered. But the Emperor did not see his sons torn apart by daemons. He did not see worlds burn while we stand idle. He turned to his equerry, a young ultramarine named Severus, who stood at attention behind him. Send word to the librarius. Tell them to rearm. Tell them to rearm. Tell them to prepare for war. The edict is suspended for Ultramar, for the Imperium, for the Emperor. Severus hesitated. My lord, that is heresy. The edict is a relic of a time before Horus turned. Guilliman cut him off. And if this is heresy, then let me be heretic. Better that than watch Ultramar die. But even with the librarians back in the fight, Guilliman faced a deadlier problem: navigation. Without the Astronomicon, the Ultramarines' fleets were trapped. They could not send reinforcements to beleaguered worlds, nor could they call for help from other loyalist legions. The warp storm had turned the eastern sectors into a prison. Guilliman knew of a way out. Deep in the archives of the Fortress of Hera, hidden behind a wall of adamantium and guarded by a squad of Terminators, lay a file marked Sotha. Classified. It detailed the discovery of the Pharos device, a relic unearthed by the Ultramarines during the Great Crusade on the remote world of Sotha. Sotha was a dead world, its surface scarred by ancient wars. But beneath its crust, beneath Mount Pharos, a volcano that had been dormant for 1,000,000 years, lay something extraordinary. A device of Xenos make, so advanced that even the tech priests of Mars could not understand it. Guilliman had visited Sotha himself, shortly after the device's discovery. He had stood in the chamber carved into the heart of the mountain, staring at the Pharos, a towering structure of black metal, pulsing with a faint blue light, its surface covered in runes that glowed like embers. The tech priest had rambled about quantum entanglement and non-warp propulsion, but Guilliman had understood one thing: the Pharos was a navigator. It could send signals across the galaxy, unaffected by the warp storm. It could be their beacon. But there was a catch. The Pharos was of Necron origin. The Necrons were a race of Xenos, older than humanity, older even than the Eldari. 60 million years ago, they had fought the war in heaven, a cataclysmic conflict against the Old Ones, the creators of the Eldari and the Cetan star gods of unfathomable power. To win, the Necrons had traded their organic bodies for shells of living metal, necrodermis, gaining immortality, but losing their souls. After the war, they had retreated into tomb worlds, sleeping for millennia, waiting for the day to reclaim the galaxy. The Pharos, Guilliman suspected, was part of their ancient navigation network, a way to guide their fleets across the stars without relying on the warp. Using it was a risk. The Necrons could wake. The device could malfunction, or worse, attract chaos. But Guilliman had no choice. He sent for Barabbas Dantioch. Dantioch was a warsmith of the Iron Warriors Legion, a traitor legion, but Dantioch had spurned Horus. He had fled to Ultramar after the Istvan V drop site massacre, where 3 loyalist legions had been betrayed and slaughtered by their brothers. Dantioch was a genius of mechanics, a man who could take apart a Lehman Russ tank and rebuild it blindfolded. If anyone could unlock the Pharos, it was him. When Dantiak arrived at the fortress of Hera, he was thin, his face gaunt, his left arm replaced with a bionic prosthetic. He had been wounded at Istvan V, his arm torn off by a World Eater's chain axe. But his eyes, sharp, intelligent still, held the fire of a loyalist. "The Pharos," Dantiak said, when Guilliman showed him the file. "I've heard rumors, Necron tech, unstable." "Necessary," Guilliman replied. "We need it to guide our fleets, to bring the loyalists together." Dantiak nodded. "I'll need my servitors and access to the device itself. Sotha is a long way. We'll need a ship and an escort. The Shadow Crusade is still out there." Guilliman smiled. "You'll have both. The Macragge's honor will take you, and the 5th Company will guard you." The journey to Sotha took 3 weeks. The Macragge's honor, Guilliman's flagship, a Gloriana-class battleship, cut through the warp, its Geller field flickering as the storm battered it. Dantiak spent the time poring over the Pharos' schematics, his servitors, small, spider-like machines with glowing red eyes, scuttling over the pages, copying data. On the 3rd day, a squad of word-bearers raiders attacked, their cruiser appearing out of the warp like a shadow. The 5th Company repelled them, but not before the raiders damaged the Macragge's honor's engines. When they finally reached Sotha, the world was as Guilliman remembered it, a desolate landscape of black rock and ash, the sky a sickly green. Mount Pharos loomed in the distance, its peak hidden by clouds. Dantiak and his servitors descended into the mountain's heart, while the 5th Company stood guard outside. The chamber housing the Pharos was even more impressive than Guilliman had recalled. The device towered over them, its blue light casting shadows on the walls. Dantiak approached it, his bionic arm whirring, and reached out to touch the runes. As soon as his fingers made contact, the Pharos flared, and a wave of energy knocked him to the ground. His servitors shorted out, their circuits frying. "Necrodermis," Dantiak gasped, pushing himself up. "It rejects human tech. We'll need to interface with it manually." For weeks, Dantiak worked. He sat cross-legged in front of the Pharos, his eyes closed, his mind reaching out to the device. He spoke to it in the language of machines, his voice a low hum. He adjusted the runes with a small tool, his hands steady despite the heat. Guilliman visited him once, finding the warsmith covered in sweat, his face pale. "How's it going?" Guilliman asked. Dantiak opened his eyes. "It's alive, not in the way we understand. More like a machine with a memory. It remembers the war in heaven. It remembers the necrons, but it's willing to help. I've calibrated it to send a signal to Macragge. When we activate it, Macragge will glow like a star in the dark." On the 40th day, Dantiak gave the word. He pressed a rune on the Pharos' surface, and the device roared to life. The blue light intensified, filling the chamber, and a beam of energy shot up through the mountain, piercing the sky. For a moment, the warp storm above Sotha parted, and Guilliman saw the stars, clear, bright, unobscured. When they returned to Macragge, the change was immediate. Ships began appearing in orbit, refugee vessels, their hulls scarred by the warp, merchant freighters, carrying what little supplies they had, even fragments of other loyalist legions. The Iron Hands arrived first, a small fleet of battle barges, their Astartes bitter and angry after the loss of their Primarch, Ferrus Manus, at Istvan V. Then the Imperial Fists, a squad of Terminators led by a captain named Thaddeus, who had fled Terra before the storm hit. And then there were the Space Wolves, a pack of 10 Astartes, their power armor painted gray, their helmets adorned with wolf pelts, arrived on a small cruiser named the Fang's Wrath. They were led by a rune priest named Bjorn Young, but with the wisdom of an old warrior, Guilliman knew why they were there. The Emperor had sent them to monitor him, to ensure he did not turn traitor like Horus. Bjorn met Guilliman in the fortress of Hera's throne room. He stood tall, his hands resting on the hilt of his frost axe, his eyes scanning the room for threats. "Primarch," Bjorn said, his voice deep and gravelly. "The Emperor commands that we watch over Ultramar, that we ensure your loyalty." Guilliman nodded. He did not blame the wolves. Horus had betrayed everyone's trust. "You are welcome here, Bjorn, but know this. I fight for the Emperor. Always have. Always will." Bjorn's expression softened. "We shall see, Primarch. We shall see." In the weeks that followed, more ships arrived. The Pharaoh's signal was a lifeline, drawing loyalists from across the eastern sectors. Macragge became a hub of activity. Astartes trained in the plains outside Konor. Tech priests repaired damaged ships in the docks. Refugees built temporary shelters in the city's outskirts. For the first time since the Heresy began, there was hope. But Guilliman knew it was not enough. They needed more than a beacon. They needed an empire. The Lion's arrival, Dark Angels and the Prisoner. The unyielding truth cut through the warp like a knife. The Dark Angels' flagship was a thing of beauty and terror. Its hull black as night, its turrets manned by Astartes in green power armor, its decks lined with the skulls of traitors. At the helm stood Lionel Johnson, Primarch of the Eye Legion, the Emperor's first created Primarch, and a man as enigmatic as the warp itself. The Lion stared at the view screen, his face impassive. The screen showed the warp storm, its colors swirling like a wound. Red, purple, black. For 2 years, he had fought the Salamander's campaign. A brutal, grinding conflict against the Night Lords, led by his fellow Primarch Conrad Kersey, the Night Haunter. Kersey had laid waste to the Salamander's homeworld of Nocturne, burning its forges and killing its people before the Lion had intercepted him. The campaign had been a nightmare of ambushes and counter-ambushes. The Night Lords had used terror as a weapon, slaughtering civilians to draw the Dark Angels out. The Dark Angels had responded with precision, their Terminators cutting through traitor lines like scythes. Finally, at the Battle of Soros, the Lion had won. The Dark Angels had shattered the Night Lord's fleet, destroying 3 of their battle barges and capturing Kersey himself. The Night Haunter was now locked in the unyielding Truth's brig. Small cell of adamantium, its walls lined with anti-psychic runes to suppress his precognitive powers. But the victory had come at a cost. The Dark Angels had lost 1/3 of their legion, and the warp storm had cut them off from Terra. They were adrift, without a compass, until the Pharaoh's signal had appeared, bright and clear, like a star in the dark. The Lion's thoughts turned to Kersey. The Night Haunter was a monster, a man who delighted in pain and fear. He had killed thousands of innocent people, all in the name of justice. But he was still a Primarch, a son of the Emperor. The Lion had vowed to kill him, to end his reign of terror. But something held him back. Was it loyalty, pity, or something else? He pushed the thought aside. Kersey was a traitor. He deserved death. "Lord Primart," a voice said. It was Azrael, captain of the Dark Angels' first company, the Death Wing. "We are approaching Macragge. We are approaching Macragge. The Pharaoh's signal is strong." The Lion nodded. "Prepare the fleet for orbit, and double the guard on Kersey's cell. I don't want him causing trouble." Azrael bowed. "As you command, my lord." When the unyielding Truth entered Macragge's orbit, the Lion saw the scale of what Guilliman had built. Hundreds of ships were docked in the system. Ultramarine battle barges, refugee vessels, merchant freighters. On the surface, He could see the fortress of Hera, its spires reaching for the sky. It was a sight to behold, a bastion of order in a galaxy of chaos. But the lion did not trust it. He did not trust Guilliman. The 13 Legion Primarch was a politician, a man who loved order more than war. The lion had always thought him soft, too willing to negotiate, too slow to fight. But now, in the age of darkness, softness was a sin. The lion descended to Macragge's surface in a drop pod, accompanied by a squad of Deathwing Terminators. They landed in the courtyard of the Fortress of Hera, where Guilliman waited to greet them. The Ultramarine Primarch was tall, his blue power armor polished to a shine, his face calm. "Lion," Guilliman said, extending a hand. "It's good to see you." The lion did not take the hand. He stared at Guilliman, his eyes cold. "Guilliman, you built quite a fortress here, but why? What is this place?" "Hope," Guilliman replied. "For the Loyalists, for the Imperium. We are cut off from Terra. We need to stand together." The lion scoffed. "Together? You think we can trust each other? After Horus? After Istvan?" "I think we have no choice," Guilliman said. "The traitors are coming. They will burn Macragge to the ground if we fight among ourselves." The lion fell silent. He knew Guilliman was right, but old suspicions died hard. They walked into the Fortress of Hera, the Deathwing following close behind. Guilliman led the lion to the throne room, a grand chamber with a ceiling painted to look like the night sky. In the center stood a throne of gold, but it was empty. Guilliman did not sit on it. "We have guests," Guilliman said. "The Iron Hands, the Imperial Fists, even a pack of space wolves. They've come because of the Pharaohs, because of you." "The Pharaohs," the lion said. "Necron tech, dangerous." "Necessary," Guilliman replied, echoing the lion's own thoughts from months earlier. As they spoke, a comms officer entered the room. "Lord Primarchs," he said, saluting. "We've received a report from the Unyielding Truth. The prisoner, Heresy, has escaped." The lion's face hardened. "What?" "He killed his guards," the officer said. "Used his claws to tear through the adamantium. He's somewhere on the ship. The crew is searching for him." The lion turned to Azrael. "Get back to the Unyielding Truth. Find Heresy. Kill him if you have to." Azrael nodded. "As you command." When Azrael left, the lion turned to Guilliman. "This is your fault," he said. "You wanted to bring everyone together. Now you've brought a monster to Macragge." Guilliman sighed. "He's your prisoner, lion. Your responsibility." "My responsibility?" the lion snapped. "I captured him. I locked him up. Your Storn. Your warp Storn trapped us here. This is on both of us." They stared at each other, tension thick in the air. Outside, the people of Macragge cheered. They had seen the Dark Angel's fleet, had heard that another Primarch had arrived. They thought it was a sign of victory. But inside the Fortress of Hera, two Primarchs stood at odds, their trust shattered by the Heresy. And somewhere on the Unyielding Truth, Conrad Heresy smiled. He had waited for this moment. He would turn Macragge into his playground. He would make the Loyalists fear him. He would make them remember the name, Night Haunter. At the helm stood Sanguinius, Primarch of the Nyax Legion, his wings folded behind him, his face pale. The wings were a wonder to behold, feathers white as snow, spanning 10 feet, each quill sharp enough to cut steel. But they were also a burden. They marked him as different, as something more than human, and in the age of darkness, difference was a target. Sanguinius stared at the view screen, which showed nothing but the warp's swirling colors. For weeks, They had been adrift. The Pharos' signal had reached them 3 days earlier, a faint pulse in the darkness, and Sanguinius had ordered the fleet to follow it. But the warp was cruel. Storms battered the red tier, its Geller field failing more than once. Daemons clawed at the hull, their screams echoing through the vents. And the Blood Angels, his sons were breaking. The Cygnus cluster had broken them. Horus had tricked him. The War Master had sent a message claiming that the Cygnus cluster, a system of 10 worlds on the edge of Ultramar, was under attack by Xenos. He had begged Sanguinius to help, to defend the Imperium's borders. Sanguinius had answered the call. He had led the Blood Angels to Cygnus, ready to fight. But there were no Xenos. Just only chaos. The Cygnus cluster was a trap. Horus had conspired with the Chaos Gods to unleash a daemon incursion, tearing the veil between real space and the warp. The worlds of the cluster had been overrun. On Cygnus Prime, the capital, Chaos cultists had sacrificed thousands of civilians to summon bloodthirsters of Khorne. On Cygnus II, plague bearers of Nurgle had infected the population, turning them into bloated, rotting creatures. On Cygnus III, daemonettes of Slaanesh had seduced the planetary governor, turning him into a pawn of the Dark Prince. The Blood Angels had fought valiantly. Sanguinius had led them from the front, his sword Wrath of Angels cutting through daemons like paper. But the daemons were endless. For every one they killed, 2 more took its place. And then Ka'Bandha had come. Ka'Bandha was a bloodthirster of Khorne, a daemon prince of war and bloodshed. He was taller than a dreadnought, his skin red as fire, his wings made of smoke. He carried a battle axe that could split a tank in 2, and his roar could shatter bone. He had sought out Sanguinius, his ancient enemy, and challenged him to single combat. The duel had taken place on the plains of Cygnus Prime, beneath a sky turned black by smoke. Sanguinius had flown at Ka'Bandha, his sword raised, but the bloodthirster had swatted him aside, his axe tearing through Sanguinius's wing. Feathers had fallen like snow, stained red with blood. Sanguinius had gotten back up, his leg broken, and charged again. He had driven Wrath of Angels into Ka'Bandha's chest, but the daemon had laughed, grabbing Sanguinius by the throat and slamming him to the ground. "I will break you, Angel," Ka'Bandha had snarled. "I will make your sons watch as I tear your wings off. I will make them bleed." Sanguinius had fought back. He had used his psychic powers, sending a wave of light into Ka'Bandha's eyes. The daemon had screamed, releasing him, and Sanguinius had struck, cutting off Ka'Bandha's hand with a single swing of his sword. The bloodthirster had fled, but not before slaughtering 5 companies of Blood Angels. Their screams had echoed through the warp, a psychic storm that had knocked Sanguinius unconscious. When he had woken, the Blood Angels were changed. The red thirst, the genetic flaw in their gene seed, a legacy of their creation, had erupted. The red thirst made them crave blood, turning them into berserkers, their eyes glowing red, their minds filled with rage. They had turned on each other, on the few surviving civilians, even on their own librarians. Sanguinius had been forced to order the loyalist Blood Angels to bind their brothers, to lock them in the Red Tier's brig until the rage passed. It had not passed. Sanguinius walked through the Red Tier's corridors, his wings dragging on the floor. The ship was silent, save for the sound of chains. In the brig, he could hear his sons roaring, their voices filled with pain and anger. He stopped at a cell where a young Blood Angel named Dante was locked inside. Dante was a promising soldier, his face young, but his eyes old. Now, his eyes were red, his teeth bared. "Lord Primarch," Dante gasped when he saw Sanguinius. "I'm sorry, I can't control it." the thirst. It's too strong. Sanguinius placed a hand on the cell's bars. I know, Dante. I know. It's not your fault. It's mine. I made you this way. The red thirst is my burden. Dante shook his head. No, my lord. We fight for you. We fight for the Emperor. We will overcome this. Sanguinius smiled. I hope so, Dante. I hope so. He continued down the corridor, his heart heavy. He thought of his homeworld, Baal, a death world of deserts and radiation, where he had been raised by the people of the Blood Angels tribe. He had saved Baal, had led its people out of the darkness. Now, he feared he had failed his sons. A comms officer approached him. Lord Primarch, she said, we've exited the warp. Macraga's ahead. Sanguinius looked up. Through the viewport, he could see Macraga, a green world, its surface dotted with cities. The Pharos' signal was strong, a blue light shining from its surface. Prepare to dock, Sanguinius said, and tell the guards to keep a close eye on the prisoners.
I don't want any trouble.
When the red tier landed on Macraga, Sanguinius was greeted by Guilliman and the lion. The two Primarchs stood in the docking bay, their expressions serious. Sanguinius, Guilliman said, extending a hand. Welcome to Macraga. Sanguinius shook his hand. Thank you, Guilliman.
It's good to see a friendly face.
The lion nodded, but said nothing. He was still wary of Sanguinius, of all Primarchs, after Horus. We have much to discuss, Guilliman said. The Heresy, it's worse than we thought. Horus is heading for Terra. He means to kill the Emperor. Sanguinius' face hardened. I know, Kabanda told me. He laughed as he said it. He said Horus would burn the Golden Throne to the ground. We need to stop him, the lion said. We need to go to Terra. Guilliman sighed. We can't. The warp storm is still too strong. We can't get through. Not yet. Sanguinius closed his eyes. He thought of the Emperor, his father, trapped on Terra. He thought of the people of Terra, waiting for help. He thought of his sons, the Blood Angels, struggling with the red thirst. We have to try, Sanguinius said. The Emperor needs us. Terra needs us. Guilliman nodded. We will. But first, we need to build something. Something to stand against Horus. Something to unite the Loyalists. We need an empire. Sanguinius opened his eyes. An empire? Yes, Guilliman said. The Unremembered Empire. Because if we fail, no one will remember us. But if we succeed, we will save humanity. Sanguinius looked at Guilliman, then at the lion. He saw the determination in their eyes. He saw the hope. Then let's build it. Sanguinius said, for the Emperor, for humanity, for the future. Chaos on Macraga, Vulcan, Curzay, and the Cabal Macraga's peace was short-lived. 3 days after Sanguinius' arrival, Conrad Curzay struck. He had hijacked the Dark Angel's drop pod from the Unyielding Truth, killing the crew and piloting it to Macraga's surface. The pod had crashed into the heart of Conor, destroying a market square and killing dozens of civilians. When the smoke cleared, Curzay was gone, vanished into the city's labyrinthine streets. The first reports came in from the Ultramarines' 4th Company, which was patrolling Conor. A squad had found a group of civilians, their throats slit, their bodies arranged in a circle. In the center of the circle was a note, scrawled in blood. Fear is my weapon, and I have plenty of it. Guilliman called an emergency meeting in the fortress of Hera. Sanguinius, the lion, Bjorn, the Space Wolves' room priest, and Thaddeus, the Imperial Fist's captain, were all present. Heresy is playing a game, Guilliman said, slamming his fist on the table. He wants to terrorize us. He wants to make us panic. The Night Haunter has always been a coward, the lion said. He hides in the dark, preying on the weak. He's not weak, Sanguinius said. He's dangerous. He has precognitive powers. He can see the future. But he knows our moves before we make them. Bjorn nodded. The wolves have fought his kind before.
We
Terrorists, cowards. We need to hunt him down. Root him out. Thaddeus spoke up. The Imperial Fists can help. We have Terminators trained in urban combat. We can sweep the city. Guilliman nodded. Do it, but be careful. Heresy is a Primarch. He's stronger than any Astartes. He won't go down easily. The hunt began. Ultramarines, Dark Angels, Imperial Fists, and Space Wolves fanned out across Conor, searching every street, every building, every sewer. But Heresy was nowhere to be found. He was a ghost, slipping through their fingers, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. On the second day of the hunt, a squad of Ultramarines found a cache of explosives in the city's cathedral. Attached to the explosives was another note. Tick-tock. Time is running out. The squad managed to disarm the explosives, but not before Kurz attacked, killing 3 Astartes with his claws. He vanished again, leaving only a pool of blood. On the third day, Heresy attacked the fortress of Hera's armory. He stole a chain axe and a bolt pistol and killed the guards, 6 Ultramarines, their bodies torn to shreds. By then, panic had spread through Conor. Civilians stayed in their homes, barricading their doors. Astartes walked the streets in pairs, their weapons raised. The lion was furious. He had failed to contain Heresy. He had failed to protect Macragge. He spent hours in the Fortress of Hera's map room, studying Conor's layout, trying to predict Heresy's next move. He's targeting symbols, the lion said, to no one in particular. The cathedral, the armory, the market square. He wants to break our morale. Sanguinius entered the room. We need to think like him, he said. Own brain. What does he want? What is his endgame? The lion turned to him. He wants to kill us, all of us. He wants to prove that the Imperium is weak, that the Emperor's dream is a lie. Sanguinius shook his head. No, there's more. He's a Primarch. He's not just a killer. He has a plan. Before the lion could respond, a comms officer burst into the room. Lord Primarch, she said, her voice shaking. We received a report from the medical center. The body. The charred body we recovered from the crashed pod. It's alive. The lion and Sanguinius exchanged a look. They had both seen the body. A charred, unrecognizable husk, found in a pod that had crashed into an industrial district weeks earlier. The tech priest had said it was dead, but apparently they had been wrong. They rushed to the medical center, a large building on the outskirts of Conor. Inside, the body was lying on a table, surrounded by tech priests. It was still charred, its skin black and cracked, but it was breathing. Slow, ragged breaths. Who is it? The lion asked. A tech priest turned to him. We've run the genetic scans, Lord Primarch. It's Vulcan. Primarch of the Salamanders. Sanguinius gasped. Vulcan was thought to be dead, killed at the Istvan V drop site massacre. But the Salamander's Primarch was an immortal blessed by the Emperor, with the power to return from death. He could not be killed permanently. He's been tortured, the tech priest said. Severe burns, mass, broken bones. His organs have been damaged beyond repair. But he's healing, slowly. The lion stared at Vulcan's body. He thought of Heresy, of the Night Haunter's cruelty. He knew who had done this. Heresy had captured Vulcan at Istvan V, had tortured him for months, and had dumped him on Macragge like a broken toy. He's awake, a tech priest said. Vulcan's eyes opened. They were filled with rage, his face contorted in pain. He sat up, his body trembling, and looked around the room. When he saw the lion and Sanguinius, his eyes narrowed. Heresy, Vulcan growled.
Where is he?
He's in the city, Sanguinius said. We're hunting him. Vulcan swung his legs over the table, ignoring the tech priest's protests. Then I'm coming with you. I will kill him. I will make him pay for what he did to me. To the salamanders. Before anyone could stop him, Vulcan stormed out of the medical center. He was still gush, his body covered in scars, but he moved with the speed and strength of a Primarch. He grabbed a nearby ultramarine sword and disappeared into the streets of Conor. The lion and Sanguinius followed him, but they were too late. Vulcan had already found Heresy. The confrontation took place in Conor's central square. Heresy was standing in the middle of the square, surrounded by the bodies of ultramarines. Vulcan charged at him, his sword raised. Heresy, Vulcan roared. This ends now. Heresy laughed. Vulcan, the immortal. I thought I'd killed you 12 times. But you just keep coming back. How boring. Vulcan swung his sword, but Heresy dodged, his claws tearing at Vulcan's chest. Vulcan grunted, but did not fall. He swung again, cutting Heresy's arm. Blood poured from the wound, but Heresy did not flinch. You can't kill me, Heresy said. I am the Night Haunter. I am fear. I am death. Vulcan roared, his body glowing with molten fire. His signature power, a gift from the Emperor. He grabbed Heresy by the throat, lifting him off the ground. I don't need to kill you, Vulcan said. I just need to hurt you, to make you feel the pain you've inflicted on others. Heresy laughed again. Pain is my friend. Pain is my ally. He head-butted Vulcan, sending the Salamander's Primarch staggering. Heresy landed on his feet, his claws raised. Come, Vulcan. Let's play. The two Primarchs fought, their blows shaking the square. Vulcan's fire clashed with Heresy's darkness, creating a shower of sparks. Ultramarines and Dark Angels arrived, but they did not intervene. This was a duel between Primarchs, and no Astartes dared to get in the way. As the fight raged, a shadowy figure watched from the roof of a nearby building. She was an Eldari Farseer, her face marked with runes of sorrow, her eyes glowing with psychic power. Beside her stood a human man, his face ageless, his body covered in a cloak of black silk. The Cabal's plan is failing, the Farseer said, her voice soft. Vulcan lives. Heresy will not kill him. The human nodded. He was an immortal, a member of the Cabal, an ancient organization of Xenos and humans dedicated to destroying chaos. The Cabal's plan was simple: let Horus win, let humanity fall. For chaos fed on human emotion, hope, fear, anger. And if humanity died, chaos would starve. "We need to kill Vulcan," the human said. "He is a gatekeeper. He will defend Terra. He will stop Horus." The Farseer shook her head. "You cannot. He is immortal. The only way to kill him permanently is with the spear of the Emperor, a relic that can destroy even Primarchs. But the spear is gone. The human you sent to retrieve it, he betrayed us." The human sighed. He was weak. He chose humanity over the Cabal. The Farseer looked down at the square where Vulcan had just driven his sword into Cursey's leg. Cursey screamed, but still, he fought on. "Chaos will win," the Farseer said. "The galaxy will burn, and we will all die." The human said nothing. He stared at Vulcan, at the Primarch's rage, at his determination. He thought of the centuries he had lived, of the civilizations he had seen rise and fall. He thought of humanity. Young, flawed, but stubborn. "We can still stop this," the human said. "We can help Vulcan. We can help the Loyalists." The Farseer looked at him, surprised. "You would betray the Cabal?" "I would save humanity," the human said. He jumped from the roof, landing lightly in the square. He walked toward Vulcan and Cursey, his hands raised. "Stop," he said. Vulcan and Cursey turned to him. Cursey snarled, but Vulcan hesitated. "Who are you?" Vulcan asked. "I am a friend," the human said, "and I can help you. I can heal your wounds. I can help you kill Cursey." Cursey laughed. "A friend? You are a fool. No one can help Vulcan. No one can stop me." The human ignored him. He placed a hand on Vulcan's chest, and a wave of light washed over the salamander's Primarch. Vulcan's wounds began to heal, his strength returning. "Now," the human said. "Finish him." Vulcan nodded. He raised his sword and swung, but Cursey was gone. He had vanished into the shadows, leaving only a trail of blood. Vulcan looked around, his chest heaving. "He'll be back," he said. The human nodded. "Yes, but now you're ready for him." As the human walked away, the Farseer watched from the roof. She knew the Cabal's plan was over. Humanity would not fall. Not yet. The heresy would continue, and the galaxy would burn. But there was still hope, and in the age of darkness, hope was a weapon. The Unremembered Empire, forging unity in shadow. 2 weeks after the confrontation in Konor's Square, Guilliman called a meeting of the Primarchs. The fortress of Hera's throne room was packed. Guilliman, Sanguinius, the Lion, Vulcan, Bjorn, representing the Space Wolves, Thaddeus, representing the Imperial Fists, and Dantiok, representing the Iron Warriors. Outside, the Pharos' signal continued to shine, drawing more loyalists to Macraga. Inside, the air was thick with tension. "We cannot go on like this," Guilliman said, standing at the head of the table. "We are divided. We are vulnerable. So, Horus is heading for Terra, and we are stuck here, fighting among ourselves." The Lion nodded. "He's right. We need a leader. We need a plan." Vulcan spoke up. "We need to go to Terra. We need to defend the Emperor." "We can't," Guilliman said. "The warp storm is still too strong. The Pharos can guide us, but not through the storm's core. We need time. Time to build our forces. Time to find a way through." Sanguinius sighed. Time is something we don't have. Horus will attack Terra soon. The Emperor needs us. Guilliman looked at each Primarch in turn. He saw the determination in Vulcan's eyes, the fear in Sanguinius's, the skepticism in the Lion's. He knew what he had to say. We need an empire, Guilliman said. A new imperium, here in the east. One that can stand against Horus. One that can unite the loyalists. One that can save humanity. The room fell silent. An empire, the Lion said. You want to replace the Emperor. You want to be War Master. No, Guilliman said. I don't want to be War Master. I don't want to be Emperor, but we need someone to lead. Someone the Loyalists will follow. He looked at Sanguinius. You. Sanguinius's eyes widened. Me? I can't. I'm not a leader. I'm a soldier. You are more than a soldier, Guilliman said. You are the angel, the Emperor's favorite. The Loyalists love you. They will follow you. The Lion nodded. He's right. Sanguinius is the only one who can unite us. I will serve under you if you accept. Vulcan smiled. As will I. The salamanders will fight for you. Sanguinius looked around the table. He saw the trust in their eyes. He saw the hope. He thought of his sons, the Blood Angels, of the Emperor, of humanity. I accept, Sanguinius said, but we need to be clear. This is not a new Imperium. This is a temporary measure. If Terra falls, we will carry the Emperor's legacy. If Terra stands, we will dissolve. We will erase all trace of this empire. We will not be remembered. Guilliman nodded. Then let it be known. The unremembered empire is born. Sanguinius will be regent. I will be governor of Ultramar, in charge of resources and logistics. The Lion will be Lord Protector, in charge of the military. Vulcan will be master of forges, in charge of repairing our ships and weapons. The Primarchs raised their hands, swearing an oath of loyalty. Outside, the people of Macragge cheered. They did not know the details of the Empire, but they knew that their Primarchs were united. They knew that hope had returned. In the months that followed, the unremembered empire grew. More Loyalist legions arrived. The White Scars, led by a captain named Corsaro Khan, the Raven Guard, led by Shrike, even a small contingent of the Alpha Legion. Though they were watched closely, the Alpha Legion was known for its treachery. The Pharos' signal was expanded, guiding ships to other worlds in Ultramar. Ajax, Espendor, Talasser, turning them into bastions of order. The Blood Angel's red thirst began to fade, thanks to Sanguinius's leadership. He spent hours with his sons, teaching them to control their rage, to channel it into strength. Dante, the young Blood Angel from the Red Tears Brig, became one of Sanguinius's most trusted advisors, leading the Blood Angels in battle against Chaos Raiders. The Lion led the military, organizing the legions into a single force. He trained them in combined arms warfare, teaching the Ultramarines to fight like Dark Angels, and the Dark Angels to fight like Ultramarines. He even managed to put aside his differences with Guilliman, working with him to plan the Empire's defense. Vulcan rebuilt the forges of Macragge, using his knowledge of fire and metal to create new weapons, plasma guns that could pierce Daemon hides, power swords that glowed with holy light. He even began work on a new fleet of ships, using the Pharos' technology to make them faster, more durable. And Guilliman? He governed Ultramar with his usual efficiency, ensuring that food and supplies were distributed fairly, that refugees were given shelter, that the Empire's laws were enforced. He spent hours in the Fortress of Hera's archives, studying the Pharaoh's schematics, trying to find a way to pierce the warp storm and reach Terra. For 5 years, the Unremembered Empire endured. It was a time of peace, of progress, of hope, but it was also a time of secrecy. No records were kept. No statues were built. No tales were told. The Primarchs knew that if Terra still stood, their empire would be seen as heresy. They knew that they would be branded as traitors, just like Horus, but they did not care. They cared about humanity. They cared about the Emperor. They cared about the future. Then, on the 5th anniversary of the Empire's founding, a message arrived. It was a single word, sent via the Pharaoh's signal: Terra. The Primarchs gathered in the fortress of Hera's throne room. The message was clear. Horus had attacked Terra. The final battle had begun. "We have to go," Sanguinius said, his voice urgent. "We have to help the Emperor." Guilliman nodded. "Dissolve the Empire. Destroy all records. Tell the legions to prepare for war." The lion stood. "I will lead the fleet. We will fight our way through the storm. We will reach Terra." Vulcan smiled. "And we will win." In the hours that followed, the Unremembered Empire was erased. Records were burned. Ships were prepared. Legions gathered in Macragge's orbit. The people of Macragge stood in the streets, watching as the fleet departed. They did not know where the Primarchs were going, but they knew they would return. As the fleet entered the warp, Sanguinius stood on the bridge of the red tier, his wings outstretched. He looked at Guilliman, at the lion, at Vulcan. He saw the determination in their eyes. He saw the hope. "The Emperor awaits," Sanguinius said. And the fleet sailed into the storm, toward Terra, toward the final battle, toward the future of humanity. Epilogue: The March to Terra. The warp storm raged around them, its colors swirling like a wound. The Loyalist fleet, thousands of ships, from ultramarine battle barges to white scars, strike cruisers cut through the chaos, their Geller fields flickering but holding. At the front of the fleet was the Macragge's Honor, with Guilliman at the helm. Beside it was the Unyielding Truth, with the Lion. And beside that was the Red Tier, with Sanguinius. They had been sailing for 3 weeks. The Pharaoh's signal guided them. But the storm was still brutal. Daemons clawed at the ship's hulls, their screams echoing through the vents. A squad of plague-bearers had boarded the Red Tier, but the Blood Angels had fought them off, their swords glowing with holy light. On the 40th day, they saw it. Terra. The planet was surrounded by Horus's fleet. Thousands of ships, their hulls black, their banners emblazoned with the symbols of chaos. The sky above Terra was black, filled with smoke and fire. The Golden Throne's light was faint, barely visible through the chaos. But there was hope. The Loyalist fleet attacked. Guilliman led the Ultramarines in a charge, their ships slamming into the traitor lines. Guilliman! The Lion led the Dark Angels in a flanking maneuver, cutting off the traitors' retreat. Sanguinius led the Blood Angels in a boarding action, their Astartes leaping from ship to ship, their swords cutting through traitors like paper. Vulcan led the Salamanders in an attack on Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, his fire burning through the ship's hull. The battle was brutal. Astartes died by the thousands. Ships were destroyed. Planets were burned. But the Loyalists fought on. They fought for the Emperor. They fought for humanity. They fought for humanity. They fought for the future. And in the end, they won. Horus was killed, his body torn apart by the Emperor's psychic power. The traitor fleet fled, their leaders dead or captured. The warp storm dissipated, its power broken, and Terra was saved. In the aftermath of the battle, the Primarchs gathered in the Golden Throne Room. The Emperor was alive, but he was weakened. Trapped in the Golden Throne, his body broken. He could not speak, but his eyes held a message. "Thank you." The Primarchs stood in silence. They had won, they had saved humanity. But the cost had been high. Thousands of Astartes were dead. Thousands of worlds were in ruins. The Imperium would never be the same. But there was hope. Guilliman would rebuild the Imperium, using the lessons he had learned from the Unremembered Empire. The Lion would hunt down the remaining traitors, ensuring that they never threatened humanity again. Sanguinius would lead the Blood Angels, helping his sons overcome the Red Thirst. Vulcan would rebuild the Forges of Terra, creating new weapons to defend the Imperium. And the Unremembered Empire, it would remain a secret, a memory, a testament to the courage of the Primarchs and the hope of humanity. For in the Age of Darkness, hope was the strongest weapon of all.